Chapter 19, the paucity of black wealth, refers to the significant wealth gap that exists between black Americans and white Americans. Despite progress in civil rights and advancements in education and employment opportunities, black Americans continue to face significant barriers to building and accumulating wealth, leading to a persistent and widening wealth gap. These obstacles can potentially be forever, but as this section covers the keys to black wealth and collective capitalism, if applied, blacks would not only be able to reduce racial disparity, but also bring opportunity to its own and begin to compete on the world stage. Starting off with question number one. In what ways does the paucity of black wealth impact individuals, families, and communities? Limited access to quality education. In the book, Amos Wilson talks about one of the authors going in detail of human capital. In general, it is the it's consisting of skills, knowledge, experiences from from somebody or a group of people that they pretty much realize, the value in it. So for someone that goes to college, there's human capital there because they've studied a major and now they feel, the confidence to take on this job or this career because of the studies that they went
Mhm.
through. And limited access to education is one of my reasons of how it would hinder black people is because if we do not have quality education, that can limit job opportunities as well as earning potential.
I would say that education is important, but having a essential education,
Right.
as well as high levels of skills, because I am the mother of a young man, so therefore you have to think about how they're going to leave a legacy into the future, and especially with our race, you have various factors that can kind of impede people from getting education. For example, like in Baltimore City, the schools, they don't have some of the best quality teachers. They don't have the necessary supplies or books to educate the children. And sometimes you have these children that have different kind of learning disabilities, and you don't have the appropriate teachers to give them the right kind of education, so that also can impact them. And also in terms of our community, just thinking about like high level skills that are going to be useful in projecting for the future,
Hmm.
because nowadays I can see this artificial intelligence that is taking over. So, of course, if we have in our community, if you don't have a good income, that's also is going to impact your children's ability to have a college education, because college is not cheap.
Right.
Right. And unless, and even if they, like even like say if they have some kind of federal or state program, they don't have those dollars like they used to when I was growing up.
Hmm.
Nowadays, they're going to get very limited funding, even if they can pursue a college education. Because even like with my son, when he did start school, it was very difficult to get even like some scholarships, because the scholarship dollars were very low. So
Hmm.
therefore, if the parent doesn't have a decent income, it's going to be hard for them to get that education. So now you still have a issue with being able to help them to get that education, to get a decent job that's going to, pay them a decent salary.
Right. And even to your point when you talked about the income aspect and just like how these institutions that we have should come up with some kind of commonwealth. The charts that were in the book, I mean, very eye opening because you see a very huge gap in black industries that are generating revenue versus industries that are white owned. And you can see that they have a lot of more money being accumulated. And even with the household, it showed one statistic of the median income that a black family would accumulate in their household versus the white family. And again, it's just a big separation between that.
When I read that, I thought about health,
Mm,
um, and the impact. You see so many people who are passing away, and you're like, what is, what is going? Not just our community, but obviously everybody. But
right.
really, the paucity of black wealth, um, impact for me. You really see it concerning health, and not just the physical health, but mental health.
I agree. Definitely a great
So
point.
yeah, just
And
throw that in there.
and it just stems from a lot of ways from this chapter when we're talking about education, health, even in the workforce too. You have the racial wage gap where black workers are usually paid less than the
Mhm.
white counterparts. So it trickles down to a lot of factors. And with question number two, from page 484, that section pretty much talked about jobs versus ownership. And one of the key takeaways I got from it was the dependent mindset that our people have adopted
Mm.
for centuries
Yes.
through slavery, colonialism, and just everything that our ancestors had went to and still to this day. When when you're so used to being delivered, scraps and
Mhm.
being told what to do
That's it.
and not really having a say or anything and just serving the interest of another, alien, as Amos Wilson
Yes,
would
yeah,
say.
that was in this chapter too. Yeah.
Over time, it just becomes a habit to where ownership is it's a it's a trigger word. It's a word that people are afraid of, and it's a word that people tend to avoid. They don't want that. They're just so used to handouts and
Hmm.
what opportunity can they get from the person that actually is the employer. So, but
And he was using the phrase the plantation mentality
the
that
plantation mentality.
yeah, that we've used. Yeah, and some past discussions that I've heard and that I've had with people, it's like it's not going to happen overnight where you get the majority of us to start thinking, you know, in a way that's going to turn everything around for us because it's been centuries of this, you know, this relationship, and really, it's getting better in some ways. Um, might not seem that way sometimes, but
Right.
there are people who are, slowly kind of making that turn. Like even if it's because they're kind of forced to do it. Okay, yeah, this is not the route. The way we've been doing things has not worked, and we have got to do it. Um, it's something that's been going on for centuries, where it's the relationship is us, the worker, the one who's the subordinate, dominated, and that definitely has an effect. Even for people, the way they think to survive is to start, you know, throwing away their dreams or curbing their dreams and saying, okay, this is all I can expect to do. Start limiting their own possibilities. Sometimes even before somebody else has a chance to do it. So you start curbing your behavior to fit the role that you're in here in this society, and that has a huge effect. And so yeah, that plantation mentality, and I've heard also the tenant versus landlord mentality.
Yep.
Sometimes,
Yep.
thinking of as an owner, as a landlord, versus a tenant, the temporary tenant. Say some people will say, I don't want to take care of this property, whatever. I don't own it. And it's been generation
Hmm.
after generation after generation. It's like, well, yeah, that kind of sets in. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah,
I
the
think
jobs versus ownership.
with that, especially in talking about generation, because from some generations, I know, my parents' generation, you're just taught to get a job, get a decent job or trade
Hmm.
so that you can continue working, because the thought of you owning a business or being your own owner is so risky for them. So I think it's going to take, our generation raising our children to let them know, even if you work for somebody temporarily to learn the skills, then you go out there on your own. And also, making sure they have some kind of blueprint to say, yeah, it's going to be risky, make these kind of decisions, save some money, have something to fall back on, but not having that fear that they can't do it, because we have become too dependent on, it's still like the slave mentality in a way that, a lot of people don't really talk about.
Right. And even from that section brought a great example that I really didn't even think about, where Amos talks about, as an example, you would have a non-black business that may have earned 100,000 sales per year, and then it has two black employees, and then they'll pay those, and they'll pay them, those two employees, 20,000, and then
Hmm.
the rest of the 80,000 not being invested into the black community that it's in. It'll just take the rest of that money and then distribute it somewhere else. They'll get to
Right,
keep it for themselves. And
right.
for me, I was just like, wow, because that explains just the tricks of the trade here. Like, it goes beyond of just, having the business, but what is the what is being reaped out of it? What is the return?
Hmm.
How is this, helping our area that we're in or so? And I think another thing too, when we're talking about the jobs versus ownership, I think a lot of people kind of how can I say it? I think a lot of people misunderstand when it comes to that, because some people think, moving from being an employee to an owner, they're thinking everybody, like all 50 million black people
Right,
want to be their
right,
own boss.
right.
Nobody works
Yeah,
for anybody.
right.
And
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds nice, but then when you look at the con of it, you do need help.
right. Not
Yeah,
everybody wants to
can
be
be.
an owner.
Right.
And
But
I think it's important to when
mm-hmm,
people talk about this to stress that it's like, yeah, no, we're not talking about everybody. Everybody has a role to play, and not everybody's going to be be an owner. Not everybody's meant to be an owner. So,
exactly. I think just the point that Amos and what we always, talk about here is just having the having the narrative and having more entrepreneurs, going forward is a great benefit, because then you
mhm,
create more jobs,
mhm,
and it's for the interests of our people first. We will be the priority instead of, at the bottom. And it can be just a direct pipeline for that. But I always get that misunderstanding all the time where people think, oh man, I got to be in business owner now because everybody's saying, we should just strive for entrepreneurship. It's like, no, that's
Yeah,
not it's not the case necessarily. No, not at all.
yeah.
Page 488 to 490, Amos Wilson talks about African American collective capitalism. And to me, for the third question, why is having our version of collective capitalism important? Well, when you look at collective capitalism, I mean, in a nutshell, if I could explain it, it's uh it's like a business model where the aim is to create shared value for everybody. So we're talking about from the stakeholder to employees, customers, suppliers, just everybody, the collective. The importance of African American collective capitalism or just Africans having that, you have something that's tangible and concrete. It's already been laid out and you could easily win the hearts and minds, of Africans. You have something that they can actually put their money into, give support, and it can continue to develop over time to where now you can actually compete on the world stage.
I thought it was important that he had specified here on 488, this that middle paragraph about the state and institutional systems playing a key role in
Mm-hmm.
collective capitalism. Um, when when we're talking when it's discussed specifically about our people in this country getting together and doing things to make our financial situation better, if anything, if nothing else. I think the emphasis sometimes is too much on individuals, like having the side gig. If you're not making enough on your main job, have a do something else to earn money, and that to me that's the obvious thing. But
Right.
as though that's a solution, sometimes that comes across from some folks that I've heard. And it, when comparing to other groups, it's important to note the role that the state and institutions play into that, um, into wealth, and it can't just be individuals. It has to be a system that's supporting, and also what Amos mentions in here about reparations. Um, that when especially comparing with African Americans and the white American community, that we could have things quote unquote equalized now, we wouldn't be made whole. We wouldn't catch up to them. The obsession is comparing our two communities. We wouldn't catch up to them financially because of what he described as the racism, everything, the oppression, the segregation, the legacy of slavery.
Mm.
When he was quoting Swinton, um,
Yep, David Swinton.
and that legacy is self-perpetuating without the reparations needed to equalize opportunities for ownership. And that's important to say, yeah, we can, things could things could be put in quotes equal now, but as far as that catching up, it won't happen because of everything that happened before, and it would it wouldn't truly be equal.
Right. Even I'm glad you brought up David Swinton because
Hmm.
it was it was his part and then also Lineal Anderson that's also in the book. Um
Yes,
when they
yes,
were
Neil,
addressing
yes.
the paucity of black wealth.
Hmm.
Lineal's take talks about the multiplier effect, where when you have one enterprise that is pretty much, I guess, the top dog or the face, and if that one is doing well, then you have this multiplier effect of the other enterprises or organizations that are part of it. They have the potential or are already doing well.
Right.
And then with David Swinston, he talks about pretty much the strength in numbers, where you have to have people to take part, in economics and investing and actually wanting to, support these things in order to compete and establish that equality factor here in America. And one of the things I thought about when they made those points was small black owned businesses. I remember I was at a pop up shop, and when I was at the pop up shop, I mean the beauty of it all was just just a lot of black owned businesses,
Hmm.
and just having the opportunity to look at their product, buy it, just having conversation, just networking. But then it also occurred to me too, how come they don't collaborate and just kind of form something together, just a big company? Because you have one person that's selling soap, essential oils, incense, and you have another person that's selling soap, oils, and incense. And it's like, wouldn't it just be best if you combine the two, the three or four or so that you can share your resources from within. You could come up better products because you all have different ideas of how you make it.
Hmm.
And then the workload would just be it'll be easier. It'll be potentially a franchise. And I think another thing too that comes into play from the book, from the chapter, is just there's just a lot of sole proprietorship. Yeah, how do you pronounce it? There's just a lot of people that,
Proprietorships. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
proprietorships. There's just a
Hmm.
lot of that. And it's not necessarily, forming that corporation or so. Everybody just wants to do their own thing. And that's just it. The road ends there.
I think it's because of what that's looked at. Like it's a lot of that is the side job. So it's an individualistic thing from the jump.
Right.
So the mindset isn't there as a, for I'm saying for some of them, like I'm part of a group that they do every other Saturday have for like, I think it's about 3 hours where you can come in and shop. You buy, just the essentials, the toiletries, toothpaste, toilet paper,
Oh,
paper
wow.
towels, napkins, soaps, honey. There's some other items in the summertime, fruit, things like that.
Right.
So that's a little bit of a collective. So the idea of what you're talking about is there with that. But with some of these, a lot of these other businesses, I think it's because how they're approaching it is that this is, this is what I'm doing on the side, and so the thought isn't there um, in large numbers to do just what you were saying. Have that. I mean, and there are enterprises. There are things that happen where there are people who come together to do, but just not in the numbers. I think that obviously we'd like to see. But yeah, I think it's the way people are approaching it. This is something I'm doing on the side. I can make this, I
Hmm.
do towels or whatever, just and sell that and make extra money and start establishing something for myself. Again, more of an individualistic thing.
Yeah. And it's funny too because that clip that was created when Hollop talks about, why huge corporations are pushing out a lot of small businesses,
Hmm.
the issue of they're not producing in bulk. And
Those prices are too high if
right,
it's yeah
prices
mom
are
and pop.
too
Yeah,
high. Exactly. So
yeah.
that was another thing when he had mentioned that. It just occurred to me from that pop-up shop experience because you can increase the amount of what you produce because now, you have other people that are creating the same thing that you're creating, or they have a different um, product that can complement it. I mean, if you have soap, of course you would want a hand towel, or
Mhm.
towel because you're washing your hands and you need to dry them. Like you don't want to air dry and then it drips on the floor and things like that. So it's a it's a way to interconnect, but not a lot of people see that, or maybe they just don't want that at all, because
I think it's
personal
not saying it.
reasons. Oh,
Yeah, I think it's not saying it. Like, hey, I've got this great idea. I could do this, and it's and the individual. The focus on individualism is still kind of key in this country. So it kind of bleeds into everything. So yeah,
yeah.
much more of a collective mindset would definitely, I think, a huge benefit. This was a good section of this chapter.
I think another importance from question 3, and this will be the dagger here because Amos Wilson always finds a way to just close it out.
Oh yeah, I bet you're gonna say what I'm looking at. Go ahead.
Or page 490.
Yep, yep.
Hmm.
You want to read it, Helena? Because you're always the best reading it.
Well, look at. Well, I wrote my notes. I wrote on my notes, so I kind of paraphrased. But there is no reason. Is that was it?
Yep,
The
yep.
very end. The very end. Yeah, there is no reason. I got it here. Why African peoples cannot and should not found and develop global entrepreneurial establishments to meet their extensive material and social needs. Imagination, vision, creativity, an indomitable will to power is needed to fashion for ourselves a wholesome and secure existence here on earth. I was
That's it
like,
right
yes,
there.
well said. Well
Yes.
said. And I said, I had in my notes here just my little thought on it is that I believe that uh, self hatred and doubt um, causes us to, you know, not do this. Um, Everybody else's ice is colder. Like we're great consumers and we're great customers for everybody else.
Right.
And they're if it's something clothing or whatever that's got the latest label, that's the best thing in the world is coming from somebody else. It's like we've got all of this. We've got this ingenuity. We've got the imagination, the vision, creativity. Um, but it takes us now orienting because of the hundreds of years of just being hammered. And so even though you might think now, you're enlightened and this is a different time, and some of that stuff does bleed over, no matter how far away from the slave mentality, I'll put in quotes,
Yeah.
who might be that, there's still a lot of work to do. And we're in talking about because he's focusing on African Americans, and then reaching out to continent and African people elsewhere. Focusing on us here, we're here, and that's still. I mean, it's even more so now. I think that like with advertising, what have you, the push to look like you're part, to look like you're accepted as part of the fabric of society. And
Right.
there's still all of this stuff that happens to us, but you see the ads and TV shows and things like that, and like, oh, this character is in Middle Earth, and he's black, and this this person is on Ragnarok, and he's black, and this, that kind of stuff. Like, oh, we're everywhere, and this is we're part of we're part of the world. TV, and it's like, yeah, but not really. In our day to day life, it's a different story.
Right. I'm
So
glad you
that
brought that
getting
up.
that, yeah, getting that out of our heads and actually focusing on what's really happening.
There's
Um,
there's the media and then there's the day to day.
Absolutely.
Chapter 20 next week will be the myth of the market economy and black power.